Welcome to Gross Anatomy.
Welcome to Gross Anatomy, everybody.
Jason Cohen, how are you? How are you, Lauren?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
And I'm Dr. Jason Cohen, and next to me is my co-host,
Lauren Taylor.
with a cool background, a new cool background.
New wallpaper, everyone. Yes.
Wow, I like it.
Thanks.
And today we have with us my big brother. I always grew up feeling that I had these two brothers that were my two brothers, and you were my bigger brother for many reasons of the two brothers. Jamie Lassner.
That is true. We were really a great group of people growing up on the Upper East Side in a synagogue that was just the Cohens, the Lassners, maybe the Korfs and a couple of others. And just we had no choice but to become brothers. And I'm glad we did.
We grew up in a shtetl almost.
Almost. You could call it that. It's not that anymore.
No,
but it's hustling and bustling now.
It did kind of feel that way when we were younger, I think, especially going to that synagogue.
Yeah, it did. It was a small synagogue, but the beauty of it is everybody was welcome. And it was you could go dressed as you wanted. You didn't have to dress up to go to shul.
I met you, I think, when I was 7, actually, or 8, or something like that. I was in nursery school when we moved there down from downtown, and that's so I've really known you for a long frickin' time.
Really long time. For me, it's got to be about 40, 45 years at least.
Yeah, exactly. And
but let's be clear. The maturity, we're about the same age. It's the
exactly.
age that
12.
Right,
12.
Well, on a good day.
Yeah. And I recently mentioned in one of our posts on our social media, I guess you saw it because we tagged you. I mentioned your father, who was this amazing presence for anybody who ever walked into that synagogue. Your dad was the guy, the man, kind of like the Don Corleone of the synagogue, but not in a scary way at all, in a loving, comforting way. And so it's very fitting that, having just been talking about you, because I like to give out mentoring advice, and your dad gave this amazing advice. I'm so happy having you here, because I knew mentally I wanted to have you on around September 11th to talk about the world and the world you've been in. So thank you, Jamie, for being here with us today.
I'm excited. I'm excited because I watch listen to your podcasts. I also love guessing what items you're posting and what kind of operations you're doing.
Cool.
Being that I'm an EMT, I try, but no, I'm not too good at it.
Yeah. And you gave me one of my most frightening experiences. And we actually had your son, Prince Fox, as a guest, although he's not Prince Fox anymore, is he?
I think his company is Prince Fox Music.
Right.
But he does his own production under Sam Lassner.
But he changed his name. We were talking about that. He changed his musical name.
No, he came back.
He's back. Okay, he's back. He kind of like unretired, like
formerly known as, right.
Right, exactly. So, you probably did one of the scariest things for me, and I talked about it with him. He wasn't aware of it at all, because he was practically a newborn when you put him in my lap in synagogue, and literally scared. I had never held a baby. He was the first baby I've ever held. And you probably didn't know that, because I think I was already in medical school. So you're probably thinking, oh, this guy's a responsible guy. He's becoming a doctor. I'm not kidding. You scared. To this day, I still am somewhat traumatized. You put this thing without any ability to hold itself up in my lap. Do you realize that?
I recall that, and I recall you getting nervous. I recall, I think your father also getting a little like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's amazing how time flies.
Yeah.
That little baby talks, produces music for world artists. It's pretty scary.
Yeah. When and why and what made you become a volunteer ambulance guy. What's the word for it?
EMT, emergency
EMT.
medical technician. So I always wanted to be a doctor, but I
never knew that.
But I was not a student. I did not enjoy school. I did not enjoy studying, and also some of the complicated stuff was not up my alley. I was good at math, good at science, but just didn't have the wherewithal to sit and listen all day to classes and go through a minimum of 6 years to go, become a doctor. So when I was 17 and a half, so that's 41 years ago, I became an EMT here in the state of New York.
At age 17? You did it? It was that long ago.
17 and a half years old.
Wow.
So became an EMT and began volunteering on Central Park Medical, which was and still is, the ambulance that covers everything in the park, from races to concerts to the Pope. So I've met a lot of I met Billy Joel, I've met the Pope, because we're backstage.
Why'd you meet the Pope?
Pope John Paul II had a mass in the Great Lawn, and we were there. So that was pretty amazing. And then we cover basically all events. So that was the first ambulance that I joined, and I got married. I was living in Forest Hills, joined the Forest Hills Volunteer Ambulance, and enjoyed that very much. And then we started an ambulance here on the Upper East Side, and I joined that, was one of the founding members. And
of Hatzalah.
Correct. And
what is Hatzalah?
Hatzalah means to save, but it is a volunteer ambulance that is in the state of New York and now all over the world.
All over the world.
All over the world. It's unbelievable. And we are a volunteer ambulance on the Upper East Side responding to all calls.
And I feel like you were pretty early on as part of Hatzalah, right? I mean, so when did it even start?
It started in the 70s and on the Upper East Side in the late 80s.
So what's crazy and weird and amazing is anytime anyone in our community needed an ambulance, you were there. You were you would show up. And so great things, crazy things, sad things, you were always there.
I guess we were a small group then. Now we're very, very big. We've got a lot of volunteers. I would call myself semi-retired. I really haven't gone on a call since COVID because they didn't want people 55 and over going on calls.
So you're an old man.
I'm very old. If you only knew, Jason, how old I am. Yeah. I'm very, very old. And they didn't want anybody going on calls that were 55 and over. And now the guys that are on the ambulance are in their 20s. They can lift, they can move, they can run upstairs. I can do the same, but not the speed and I guess the quality that is required now. I did my 40 years, as they say.
Yeah. I got to tell you, it was always an amazing, comforting feeling, no matter where we would be in any situation. They'd call in the ambulance and Jamie would be there. And it was always, it was just a great thing.
Thank you. That was, it's a community ambulance. That's what we were there for.
Yeah. And it really felt, does it still feel, or did it still feel pre-COVID like a small, it really felt because of Hatzalah, because of what you did, it felt like a small community up there. Does it feel that way anymore?
No, we've gotten very big with all the hospitals now having doctor's offices. I would say during the day, most of our calls were at doctor's offices where a patient came in for something and it turned out to be an urgent matter rather than a visit to the doctor. And there we went, and that's what it's turned into. It's very busy now.
And then, so since we're September 1, we're here in September now. So, I was already here on the West Coast. I had just moved to the West Coast, but wow. I don't really know. Yeah, it's been 22 years since I've been here. I don't think you and I have ever talked about what your experience was with 9/11 and what that was like for you. And I don't know if it's gonna, be traumatic to talk about. I'm sure you've talked about it a bit.
I've talked about it many times. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be talking to several schools next week. It's part of my PTSD therapy to talk about it and not keep it inside. But it's a whole. I mean, you were alive. You were understanding of what was going on. Talking to students now in high school, it's a whole different ballgame. I mean, they're under 20, so they have no recollection of it. So it's a different type of lesson plan or discussion to have than what I experienced. I share briefly what I experienced, a little more obviously with you, but most of the subject matter is telling anybody that they can do anything they want, they can help anybody they want, they can step up to the plate. No, I'm not a Superman. I'm far from a Superman.
You are a Superman.
No,
you've always been a Superman.
No. So if I'm Superman, you're a Superman, and you're a Superwoman, Lauren. But let's all get on those outfits at least. Watch
get our capes.
Right, yeah. That's right. No, but in a nutshell, I was a commodities broker working 3 blocks away from the World Trade Center. Got a call that. No, it was AOL, which had just started. Give you an idea, it wasn't. It's not like we have now computers where you know before the plane hits that it's going to hit. On AOL, it said a small plane had hit the World Trade Center. So we went to the back of the office to look, and when you looked at the top of the World Trade Center, it looked a lot bigger than a little plane. And then a couple of seconds later, the ambulance radio went off. And we were told to respond to City Hall as a place of collection. And I started walking up Broadway, and hundreds, if not thousands of people were running the other way. And then when I got a little closer, I was about 2.5 blocks away, 3 blocks away, you even saw a bigger hole than a little Cessna could have done. I got close to Century 21 when the second plane hit. Saw that. And that I remember vividly, seeing the plane hit the World Trade Center and then the explosion on the other side. And then during the second collapse, during the first of all, we were working. We never expected the towers to come down. The 2 planes hit. That was enough. Okay, now let's do our job. That's what we're trained for.
Wait. So you walked over there and walked over there.
Ran. Yeah, I did run. Believe it or not.
Yeah, and you were there before the second plane hit?
Correct.
And you were there working already, trying to...
I jumped on a Brooklyn ambulance that had just arrived and started working with them. And then...
Doing what?
So you can't we couldn't transport because we had parked right near the Millennium Hotel, and behind us were other vehicles, so we weren't going anywhere. So we opened up the back doors and the side door, and it was basically, what do you need? Okay, here you go. Give us your name. Come in. Go out. We didn't have.
And who were the people? The people were people who had
random people. I have dust in my eyes. Do you have a bottle of water? I need a Band-Aid. I cut my arm. Do you have bandage? We didn't treat anything major, and frankly, we didn't really have a lot of time in the ambulance to treat people. And then it was we heard thumping. We heard the people. We didn't look, but we heard that thump of people falling. We were close enough to hear it, and it's one of those things that still gives me the EBGBs. And then it's got to be minutes where we heard firemen telling us to get away. It looks like it's coming down. And I remember looking up and seeing the big antenna just tipped like that. And I was like, oh my God. And we just ran as far as we could. We got in about a half a block away into a building, and we were there with about 50 or 60 people. Luckily the building remained open, so we got ourselves into a lobby, then into a second floor office. But it was just a lot of dust, it was difficult to breathe. We had 3 asthmatics that we had to get to the hospital with no equipment. And we had 1 firefighter that was very seriously injured, and we had to get to the downtown Beekman Hospital. It's got a new name now. I forgot what it's called now. And we just sat there in the building waiting, till we could get out. And then we finally decided to try to make a move for it. And because we're a block and a half away, we had a good 3 inches of dust and dirt and debris and whatever a building can knock down. And we started walking very quickly, and then we started hearing the beeps off of the fire radios that the second building was coming down. And we looked for a door, opened the door, and as we couldn't see. We were just keeping our heads down and trying to walk slowly. We knew the direction we were walking, and I stepped in, and it was a staircase of a parking lot. And I fell, and 2 of the guys fell on top of me, and I hurt my right leg. Didn't know what it was, but when I tried to get up, it wobbled. So I knew that I had done ligaments, didn't break the leg or anything like that. So I just, the fireman had like a small bag with him, and in it he had 2 pieces of, I guess it was a splint.
Yeah.
I just put it on each side of my leg to stabilize it. And we got out, limped our way to the hospital, got them, the 3 asthmatics and the fireman, to the hospital. I don't know whatever happened to them. And then I made my way to Beth Israel Hospital on an ambulance as an EMT in the front seat. And when I got there, I just, I said to myself, here I am. I've been trained for 14 years. This is the big one. I'm not quitting. So I got a brace, put on a brace, a makeshift brace, took some Advil and some other medicines, and we headed back to Ground Zero. I was assigned first to Manhattan Community College to set up a MASH center with tents inside their gym for surgery purposes. Then I was assigned with I think it was a Beth Israel ambulance to go to Chelsea Piers and start setting up body bags near the ice rink. And then I got back downtown at about 3:30. Now, throughout all this, I hadn't talked to Mara. All Mara knew was that I was going. Mara is my wife. All Mara knew is that I was going back, going to help this little plane. That's all she knew. Hadn't talked to her all day because the main antenna was the World Trade Center for
all phones were down. Everything was down.
Correct. Yeah. And I finally got to outside Chelsea Piers. There was a Hatzalah ambulance, one of our volunteer ambulances. I jumped on, saw a couple of guys I knew. We kept trying to call. One of the people got through to their wives and just basically jotted down numbers and just said that we're all fine, but there's no phone service. And then we got online to, so we're on 23rd Street. You're talking a mile and a half away from the World Trade Center. And there's a line of ambulances at about 4 o'clock. And at 1 o'clock, we were told to go home. We had moved maybe a block. So it was one of those events that, in hindsight, you say to yourself, such a big building. And it was either you made it or you didn't make it. There weren't people coming out injured. There was no, mass casualty incident. It was a mass casualty incident, but not in the sense that we expected that we would be, okay, you get on this ambulance. Okay, you get on this ambulance or anything like that. I came home. I had a kippah on my head, and when I took off the kippah, that was the only thing that wasn't dirty. My hair was clean there. And then the following day, we were assigned to the Upper East Side to manage all EMS calls because all of EMS was down at Ground Zero. And then Wednesday afternoon, I was assigned to work at Ground Zero till it became a rescue and recovery on Friday afternoon. Came home, went to synagogue, and 2 of the doctors touched my knee, looked at my knee, and basically diagnosed it there. I made an appointment to see Dr. Norm Scott, who was then the knee surgeon for the New York Knicks and the New York Rangers. And our good friend Alan called me about a half hour before. He goes, I'm not going to him. You're going to my friend, Dr. Howard Levy. And I said, I'm going to, he goes, I'm telling you, this is a guy you're going to get along with. And 22 years later, I'm still in touch with him. He's done 6 of my knee surgeries. 3
You've had to have 6 surgeries on that same knee?
No, 3 and 3.
Uh,
Because once this one got weak, the other one got weaker. And it was like a tennis match. But thank God they've been behaving. And then after my first surgery, did not want to talk to anybody. And somebody came in and said, you basically have PTSD. And I was like, what is that? He goes, well, post-traumatic stress disorder. You need to see a psychologist. And I said, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to see a psychologist. I'm perfectly fine.
Was stuff going on with you or
yeah. I was very, very, very depressed, very anxious. I think very upset at the fact that here I am trained for so many years and we didn't do anything. We just sat there. We did nothing. Not to any fault of myself, but that's the way the event happened. And I refused to go see anybody. And of course, my father came in and got in my face, hockey style, and just said, look, you got to do it for 3 months. You got to see a psychologist. What you saw in one day, I did not see in 3 wars. You have to get out there and you have to see a psychologist. Then he brought in a friend of his who was also a good friend of mine, a neurologist. And he said, when you had your knee problem, where do you go? To a knee surgeon. When you have a stomach problem, where do you go to? He goes, and then he said, what you have in your head right now is you need someone to help you straighten that out. And that in itself is an amazing story because I had a brace on for 6 months. I had PTSD, and I show up at this doctor's office, New York Cornell. Not a lot of art like you have and you display in your offices, but just certificate on top of certificate. And basically the last patients she really treated and continues to treat were people from the Vietnam War.
Wow.
Because it wasn't really post-traumatic. You have that in certain countries where there's terrorism, but this was really the first time that we had major event like this. And I walk in and I am in no mood I want to get fixed as quickly as possible. And I go in, and it's a psychologist, and she goes, okay, Jamie, what are you ordering for dinner? Let's make believe we're having dinner. And I'm like, I'm not playing house here. What are you talking about? He goes, tell me what you're having for dinner. Let's just make believe. I said, I'm not playing that game. So she said, I'll tell you what I'm having. I'm having a hamburger, French fries, and a glass of white wine. So she said, what are you having? I said, I'm not playing this game. She goes, okay, can I order for you? I said, you can do whatever you want. She says, you're having a Coca-Cola and a cow. And I looked at her and I said, I can't eat a cow. He goes, precisely. What you have in your head, you can't digest. And we have to cut up the pieces so that you're left with 2 or 3 pieces that the average mind can digest. So we spent 6 months going through every big thing and every little thing that was a trigger that upset me, that I saw, that I may have seen. We went through literally everything, and we just did a check. Okay, that's okay. I got that. That's fine. That's fine. And was basically left with 3 or 4 items. The first one, the boys noticed that when I walked anywhere and there was the sound of planes overhead, I would go right into a store, but without saying anything. I would just grab them and go into a store.
Wow.
That has stopped. I mean, I'm pretty good at that. The second item was anytime I see dust and papers blow up, I automatically begin tearing, because that's all we saw for 3-4 days. Reservations, business cards, pieces of desks, wedding pictures. That's what went up to basically 14th Street. It was just tons of this stuff. The third thing was on Thursday night, in the middle of the night, 3 McDonald's trucks showed up on the west side of Ground Zero where we were stationed. And they said, can you help us? So I said, sure, I'm going to unload food. Absolutely. We've got so many rescuers here. I'd love to do that. And they open up the back and it's empty, and it's refrigerated trucks. And we were asked to load what was in the winter garden into the trucks. So to this day, and very much triggered during COVID when we had refrigerated trucks at Mount Sinai, Lenox Hill, at all the New York hospitals and the city hospitals. Refrigerated trucks are a trigger for me.
Wow.
But I am capable now of looking at them and saying, refrigerated truck, they're carrying food, they're not doing this. But during COVID, when you saw it on TV, that was a major trigger, because I knew that they weren't keeping these trucks outside hospitals for no other reason.
Wow.
And then the last thing, which I got over very, very quickly, thanks to the boys' humor, is I have 8 screws and 4 wires in my own tendon that fixed my ligaments in my right leg. So when we went to fly to see Andy in California, the boys went over to the TSA agents, excitingly saying, "Oh, my dad's going to set off the metal detector." And that cracked me up, and that made it a lot easier. But, when I get on planes, I get a little nervous, but, I'm pretty much over it.
Huh. You made me think of 2 particular things, one about you and one about your dad. Actually, they're both about your dad, but one includes you. Your dad was a Marine, and a Jewish Marine, which is, especially back in the day, is pretty rare. And again, your dad, as you know, as we, all of our group knows, was this amazing guy. And I remember sitting in synagogue one day, and he looked very pensive. I don't know if you were there. You must have been somewhere, but he was like all serious. He had his head down in his hand, and he just was looking real serious. And then he kind of just picked his head up, and he looked at me and my dad, and he goes, it was D-Day. It was the anniversary of D-Day. And he goes, and I guess he was just thinking about it. And he's like, I was on one of those beaches, storming the beaches, and everyone around me, left and right, was dying. Everyone was dropping dead, except for me. And he's like, what the hell was I doing there? Why was I there? And how am I here now?
Right.
And I still remember hearing him talk about that, and how your dad was, how did he get through that? He got through that same kind of thing as you did.
So he did the entire Pacific campaign of World War II against the Japanese, then the Korean War, and the beginning of the Vietnam War. And he truly believed in country, very different than now. But he believed in country. He believed in defending the country that gave him, and I think that's what kept him going. When we moved into our apartment on 94th Street, my mother's decorating, and my father said, "Okay, are you done decorating? Good. I ordered an American flag, and it's going to be behind me where I sit at the table." And since I was a kid, that's, if you have pictures of my father in the living room, there's the American flag behind them, the Marine Corps emblem on the left. We called it Command Center North. But that's what he was. That kept him, going through it and successfully. And he was very much my rock throughout. He was amazing, as was my family, my kids, my wife. And then after about a year and a half, they sent me to a psychiatrist who said, "You need medication." And I said, "No, I'm doing pretty well." He goes, "No, you should try this stuff. It'll help you." So I started on a medication called Paxil.
Uh-huh.
And you're a doctor. I don't have to tell you this, but you know this. The label says, "Oh, this will help you for this, and then there's 10,000 little words that say, "Well, the second item is you may gain weight." And I went from 225 to 463 pounds.
You got that big?
I was ginormous.
I didn't see you then for a while.
I was a 42 waist. I went up to a size 58 waist.
Wow.
As Andy. I have a picture of him in his pool. He calls it the moo picture, because I look like a moo. And I realized when it got hard to play hockey with the boys, they were starting to play ice hockey. I couldn't get on skates anymore or anything, that it was time to lose weight. And that's where you stepped in. And, we talked about lap bands and where you should do it and what kinds you should do. And I've had a lap band now for 12 years. I'm back to the weight that I was. I'm lighter than I was before 9/11 and still losing weight and loving it and running marathons and doing triathlons and hiking and doing other crazy humanitarian things.
Yeah. And now, you've become this whole other guy. You're no longer a commodities trader or anything like that. And you're doing weird and wacky hiking and nutty trying to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, right?
Yeah. So after therapy in 9/11, I decided that, money is not everything. It's important, but it's not everything. Started working in schools, doing student life, and then was through Alan, given and met some people. So introduced me to an organization in Israel, and we started their U.S. office here. And that has brought us to be the largest group ever to make it up to the top of Kilimanjaro with people with disabilities. We had 4 people with paraplegia that made it to the top with special wheelchairs that we have made in Israel. We just came back, Mara and I, from 3 weeks at the Polish-Ukraine border doing humanitarian work there because in Ukraine, people with disabilities are not really looked after at all. And we basically went in as far as eastern Ukraine, brought them to the border, and then from there triaged them and then sent them on their way to a country that would take them based on their disability. So Scandinavian countries, a lot of the northern countries north of Poland were taking people. Israel took a couple, not a couple, 100,000, but all walks of life, non-denominational, all disabilities, some really incredible stories that we shared together. We had 8 people with us over a period of 3 weeks. We have people on the ground there now. We have an app that if you are a person who has a disability and want to get out of Ukraine, it's gotten around social media. So people are contacting us 24/7. And we are now up to about 5,000 to 6,000 people with disabilities that we have evacuated, triaged, and found new homes for and their families. And we've provided humanitarian aid to approximately 18,000 people additionally. And most of them people with disabilities and the elderly.
Are you a thrill seeker?
Not at all. It's a cross, I think, between what Benji Brown used to say, is this is what we do. You just got to do it. And we also had a rabbi in high school, Rabbi Lookstein, who taught us that we are our brother's keeper. And I always, took that to heart very much so. And I guess that's part of the reason I was a volunteer medic. Instead of dropping out and not going to medical school, not doing anything along the medical lines, I did that. And this was one of those where, over the years, we've all read, all people have read about atrocities all over the world and how the world stands idly by. Sadly, in this case, it's somewhat similar, but within the refugee center that held 1,000 to 2,500 people, we were all the same heart, same people. We worked with 25 different countries, people from 25 different countries, and our hearts beat the same way. We were there to help people who were in dire need of help. And at no time, did I say it was just a mistake or anything like that. I felt it was the right thing to do. And now I'm starting to look at possibly bringing some of our students and or other groups because it's fairly safe to do it in Poland or in...
You never felt that you were in any sort of danger over there?
No, never.
I remember, that when I said, "Are you a thrill seeker?" I remembered now that you also, when we were kids, I think you went to Russia, right? You
right.
You went on a mission to
you got
Russia.
A great memory. You're young. I forgot about that.
It just popped into my head. You went. in the 80s, right? Or when were you in
80s, mid 80s, when Gorbachev came to power. We went for Passover to bring stuff in and teach Hebrew and do a lot of things. Yeah, not a thrill seeker, because a thrill seeker is also one who's prepared to bungee jump. Not me. A person who's prepared to parachute. Not in this lifetime. And you might see me on a kiddie roller coaster when we go to. I will not do roller coasters.
Yeah.
But when it comes to stepping up to people in need, my father, Mr. Brown, implanted it, that in.
Not my father.
Well, you did, Jason. You did. I mean, you take a look at the podcast you have done and the life you have chosen for yourself and the countless lives that you save every day. Do I wish at times that I would be able to do the same thing? Of course. So we all are doing our piece. Some in different ways. I mean, I could call you a thrill seeker because you pull out the stuff out of people's, whatever, and then you post it, and I'm like, yeah, I never saw anything like that. That's a little.
Yeah. I still remember you telling us stories about your rush. It just came into my head. I totally had forgotten about it until now. How old? You had to basically.
I was 19.
You weren't supposed to be there, and the people you were meeting with, it was Jews who were in hiding, basically, right? And
they were called, the term for them were refused NICs,
right?
The people who were refused visas to exit, to go anywhere, Israel, America, to get out, just because they were Jewish. And when Gorbachev came to power, sadly he passed away yesterday, but when Gorbachev came, he started to make it a little more democratic and started opening up the Iron Curtain so that people could get out. And we went in to meet a lot of these people, get to know them, and then come back and speak about them and, get the ball rolling on trying to get visas for them. And we actually had the opportunity to do that as well.
Did you go more than once?
I went to Russia. I went for 2 weeks. Went with Josh, David Thurstenfeld.
Were you ever, I remember you telling me that you were pretty scared at certain times there.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were always, we watch movies, so you think the KGB's following you, this one's following you, and that one's following you. And in the end, I don't think anybody followed 3 college guys. But we met a lot of, leaders of the community. It was right after Sharansky was arrested. So there was fear. We did go to the synagogue on Passover, and you did feel like you belonged. So we didn't hang out there that long. We did run a couple of meals. We taught some Hebrew lessons, songs, and did a lot of talking and visiting people's homes to get as much information as we could so that we were able to get them visas to whatever countries they wanted to go to.
You're going to write a book? You definitely have a lot of stories here to tell.
So it's funny. I don't write well, Jason. I'm not a good student. I could write a book, but it would be more like a kid's book.
Coloring book?
Yeah. Even that would be tough. You would have to do the illustrating. I would maybe write. That would be an interesting one.
Yeah.
How do you even how do you get involved in what you're doing to help people in Ukraine with disabilities? How do you even?
So that's a great question. So that a year and a half ago during COVID, there were missiles shot at Israel, and our Israeli organization realized that people with disabilities were not able to be evacuated because they weren't able to get to their safe rooms. They couldn't go downstairs. They couldn't do a lot of the things that we can. So after the missiles stopped pouring on Israel, we put in a room all members of the military, the police, rescue units, and about 25 people. Our organization, Accessibility Accelerator, Access Israel in Israel, and we all sat in a room. They sat in a room and just talked it out, and put together a plan in the event that, God forbid, it would happen again. And lo and behold, it didn't happen there. It happened in Ukraine. And it's pretty much a similar system in that We have first responders. We can't do it all. We're volunteers. Even governments can't do it themselves. So we've collaborated with people in Ukraine, a lot of volunteers. We've figured out ways to get people out, get them to certain borders, and then they're met by either us or representatives of us. And then from there, we talk to them and try to figure out where the best place for them to go is in terms of their story themselves. So the Scandinavian countries might be better for one specific disability than another. In terms of we've got many incredible stories. We've had the two most incredible that really sit in my mind, not necessarily about how much it cost us to get them out, but in terms of incredible, is Ukraine was one of the largest populations of Holocaust survivors. We evacuated a 98-year-old woman and a 96-year-old man, Holocaust survivors, and they were reunited with family in Israel.
Wow.
And the second one, which was pretty amazing, was we had a 27-year-old blind woman who was on dialysis, needed dialysis every 36 to 48 hours. And she was eastern Ukraine, right near the Russian border. We had an ambulance pick her up. We stopped once in Ukraine for dialysis, twice in Poland, and then got her and her mother to a relative, and they're now living happily ever after. And then in that local area, we actually contacted the taxi company and told them that we have this woman who's blind. She's going to be going to dialysis every 36 to 48 hours. Will you provide free rides? And the taxi company agreed.
Wow.
So we've got, it's been a volunteer collaborative effort. Every person that we're working with are all volunteers, all people that are doing amazing things and also thinking out of the box. We have one gentleman that I met who was helping us with, not helping us, was bringing in pet food into the Ukraine and coming back with animals, pet food, animals. And when he didn't have a full truck, he would help us occasionally to bring people out. So we had, various modes of transportation to get people out, including ambulances that we were able to use. And it's remarkable what we've accomplished from the first time I went there in March to see what was going on to what we're doing now. When I went the second time with a group of 8 people over a period of 3 weeks, Mara and I stayed the 3 weeks. It was quite incredible.
So is that pretty much now what you're focused on primarily, work-wise?
No, work-wise, we're focused on, I work in a school as a director of student life, but...
What school?
North Shore Hebrew Academy.
North Shore Hebrew Academy.
Look at that. So, and it's great. And on Fridays, Saturday, and Sundays, I do this. And then 24 hours a day, I'm on the cell phone seeing what's going on with the rescues. And if they have a question for me, which is very rare because I'm on this side of the pond, then I get involved. But it's very, very rare that I'm getting involved. But when I was on the ground there, it was literally 24/7.
What's your next trip or adventure?
Probably going to go back to Ukraine. Sadly, it's not in the headlines anymore, but it's gotten worse in the sense that when tragedy strikes, the wealthy are able to get out and find their way and get their money into new banks and so on and so forth. And the people escaping now are very, 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 very poor, have been through 6 months of hell already, and are not traveling by car. Some of them are walking miles. Some of them are scrounging pennies to get onto a train. And when they arrive to us, they're literally moving on fumes. And that's where you see the greatness of people who step up to the plate. The most amazing organization that we had the opportunity to work with and get to know was World Kitchen. which is basically a group of tents and volunteers from all over the world that show up. It started in Haiti, and now every major disaster, they show up and they serve 3 meals a day plus snacks. And when I mean meals, I mean major meals, pretty much covering all allergies. I think the chef is a Spanish chef by the name of Jose Andres. There was a documentary recently about him, and he started it just in Haiti, and it's now blown up to something really huge and quite remarkable. What he does. I mean, feeding people who have absolutely nothing.
I have a pathetic question. What kind of, where were you sleeping when you guys were there? Like what?
Excellent question. So the area that we were in was near the Medica border. Medica is near the Carpathian Mountains. And during the summer, it's an area where people go into Ukraine, Poland, and they vacation there. Well, during war, no one's vacationing there, so all the 5-star hotels were empty. So a lot of them were available to us. So one of the things that I learned from 9/11 and practiced it here is when we're volunteering and working, excluding the phone, but when we're with people, we're with people. We're working the 12 to 16-hour shift, doing what we got to do, and then we got to step away. So we stayed about 15 to 20 kilometers away from the border. So if we were needed at the border, we could get there in 20 minutes, but far enough that we weren't seeing it going on 24 hours a day, seeing him in the hotels. And that was for our own mindset so that we don't come back with a second round of PTSD or first round for others.
Yeah. Did you ever feel in harm's way or not at all?
We heard the air sirens go off, I recall, once, but nobody moved. So I figured, you know what? If nobody moved, I'm not moving. Yeah. But we did hear the air raid sirens when we were at the border. It was scary at first, but if you've been to Israel or any other country, you hear them from time to time. So never at all in harm's way, at all.
Jamie, are you I'm a big pathetic pop culture fan. Is there a certain movie or TV show or anything you're watching lately that you're into? So
over COVID, we started watching a bunch of couple of documentaries, but we spent a lot of time on shows that we've never watched. So we've watched Seinfeld seasons. Now we just finished Curb Your Enthusiasm, loving that, and a couple of others. But we're not big TV watchers. I'm more of a reader. But yeah, Curb Your Enthusiasm we've been enjoying.
For me with Seinfeld, I never used to watch it because everybody would be, oh, Seinfeld. And I deliberately didn't watch it because Seinfeld's about a neurotic Jew from New York. And I'd be like, I don't need to watch a show about myself. But I finally, watched it. It is great.
So it is great. His stand-up, it's on Netflix. His stand-up is hilarious. Really excellent. And I just heard that Curb just renewed for another season. So I'm excited about that. Yeah. But really, trying to stick to the humor. I'm not into the scary and gory movies anymore like I used to be. I like documentaries also. Cool. And food shows. I mean, I still like food.
Jamie, thank you for doing this with us.
So we really in touch, my brother. Nice meeting you, Lauren.
Thank you so much for doing this, and thanks for all that you do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Jason, love you, buddy.
Bye, Jim.
Take care. You. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to Gross Anatomy, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you can check out more episodes on the evolving sights, smells, and sounds of medicine. Gross Anatomy is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.